Hello my friends and welcome back to my channel. My name is Liv, or Olivia if you have never been here before. Thank you so much for stopping by. I am so excited to chat with you all today about reading slumps. The end of the month of April, I definitely was put in a reading slump, and for very good reason, because I was reading 3 physical books at once, which is not something I typically do anymore, but that just made me realize that I have never done a reading slump book recommendation video before. So I thought it would be super fun to compile a list of books that got me out of a reading slump, or just some of my favorite books that I think would help you get out of a reading slump. Before I dive straight into the books though, I thought I would give you guys a couple pointers if you are in a reading slump or you ever find yourself in one. The first thing I always love to recommend is just to reread an old favorite. For me, that would be the Harry Potter series or Hunger Games, or just to watch a movie adaptation of your favorite book. I think it's just such a fun experience to read your favorite book and then see it come to life through a movie, whether you've watched that movie a million times before or not. I feel like that just always reignites my love of reading. But also, if you are solely a physical book reader like I used to be, I think it's such a great idea to try books in different formats. Not only audio or Kindle, but maybe try graphic novels or manga. Maybe try a beginner fantasy and just try something new to try to reignite that love of reading. I know that has helped me in the past, and I definitely have some good graphic novel recommendations here to give you guys if you don't know where to start. But let's just go ahead and dive into some of my personal recommendations, and I did try my best to choose a few from each genre, so that way if you are solely a romance reader or you're solely a fantasy reader, hopefully there will be something here for you. So the first genre I want to start with is no surprise. I personally feel like thrillers could get you any type of weird reading funk that you may be in, because they are so fast paced. They're usually page turners. Sometimes you have like an unreliable narrator where you just are so confused with what's going on and you have to know what happens. So the first author I wanted to recommend is Taylor Adams. We have No Exit and also The Last Word. This one just came out, but this was one of my very first thrillers, if not my first thriller I ever read. So I kind of have a special tie to this author because of that. No Exit takes place during a very short span of time. It basically takes place over one night, which I also feel like definitely contributes to the factor of wanting to keep reading, because there's so much happening every single minute of this book. Our main character Darby is trying to make it home to her mother from college because her mother is currently very ill, but something very sinister happens during a snowstorm and she is forced to pull over on an exit, and she discovers that there is a child being held captive in the back of a van of one of the other strangers that's also stopping at this rest stop. I will just warn you, Taylor Adams goes there. Things get kind of gory, things get crazy, there are turns left and right, you don't know who to trust, but I've never had a book that makes my heart race as much as this one did. I was literally on the edge of my seat. I read it in one sitting. I stayed up till 2 or 3 a.m. because I had to know what happened. I think this book would be good at any time of year. Yes, it takes place during a snowstorm, but because it's just so high energy, I feel like you could definitely pick this up anytime and still enjoy it. As for The Last Word, this one definitely has a very different vibe, but this is the last thriller that I read and I gave it 5 stars. It was so insanely crazy, I could not put it down. It is about a woman who goes to this house on the coast and she is taking care of someone else's house while they are on, I think, vacation or just out of town, and you know that she has some type of trauma that she's working through or things that she's going through, but you don't know what that is. All we know is that our main character Emma is a huge avid reader, so she decides to pick up a book that was recommended to her by her neighbor, and she hates the book, so she decides to leave a 1-star review on Amazon of this author's book. And then the the author decides to email her and ask her to please take down her 1-star review. This is going to ruin my career. So the whole time you are just wondering what in the world is wrong with this author and why does he care so much to come after our main character Emma. And the way that Taylor Adams just layers his stories, he always keeps me on the edge of my seat. And I do want to say I feel like he adds a little twist of horror to this one, which I thought was definitely super interesting but also very entertaining. So up until the last minute I was just flabbergasted, and this one is just another crazy thriller that will keep you reading late into the night. And another book from one of my all-time favorite thriller authors is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. I feel like you could pick up any of his books, especially The Last Time I Lied going into the summer. I feel like that one would be perfect, and I still think about that twist to this day. But this one still stands as my ultimate favorite. You have a book within a book, you have an unreliable narrator, you don't know what's happening, there are spooky estate or haunted house vibes in this one, and it's great for any time of the year. And I just kind of want to leave you guys hanging with that. I don't want to go too into detail about this one because I went into this one completely blind and it had me shook. So highly recommend checking out Riley Sager. I know he's super popular in the community, but if you have not read this one specifically, I definitely recommend reading it sooner rather than later. The next books I wanted to recommend, but could really also recommend any of her books, is Jennifer McMahon. Probably no surprise if you guys have been here for a while. If you have not picked up any of her books and you have been here a while, what are you doing? You need to go read a Jennifer McMahon book. I always recommend people start with The Winter People, but I think after thinking about it more, this one might almost top The Winter People for me at this point. So these are two completely different vibes, but I think what really makes Jennifer McMahon special and what makes you want to keep reading her books is she has dual timelines in every single one of her book. So you have the past day and then the present day, and I feel like you're always just constantly intrigued in both of the timelines, and it just is such a page turner. The way she writes is so brilliant, and I will literally pick up anything that she writes. In this book we have a lady named Sarah who was found dead in the field behind her house, and in the present day a girl named Ruthie ends up living with her mom in the same farmhouse, but I believe her mother actually goes missing and she ends up finding the diary of Sarah, and that is just the start of everything crazy that happens in this book. I'm not going to say anything else, but I really love also when a book has diary entries or letters within the writing. I think that just makes it extra intriguing and is such a nice touch. So if you love thrillers that are a little bit off the walls, I would definitely recommend this one because I did not see the ending coming. This one, on the other hand, is one for people that love Frankenstein vibes, but also asylums and creepy children. So I feel like I could leave it at that. I personally love the story of Frankenstein, and this would be perfect for spooky season. In the present day timeline of this book, we actually have a girl named Lizzie who runs a podcast called Monsters Among, and it was just such an interesting element. Once again, Jennifer McMahon always just weaves these very intriguing elements into her stories, and just when I thought I had everything figured out in this book, I definitely did not. I was absolutely shook at the epilogue specifically. I was just like, what in the world? It made me question everything I had just read, and I also really love open-ended stories, and I feel like this one was kind of that. This was just perfect for my taste, but if any of those are buzzwords for you, definitely check this one out. And then we have The Silent Patient, which is an older thriller, but honestly still a goodie. I remember reading this, I think right after No Exit. It was definitely one of the first 2 to 3 thrillers I had ever read. I've never reread it now, but this just had me absolutely shook. This one follows a girl named Alicia who literally will not talk. Ever since she witnessed her husband getting shot, she has not talked, and so you kind of follow her through these therapy sessions and going to see the doctor and just trying to pull out of all of these deep dark thoughts that she has and the things she's going through, and she's really the only one that witnessed this happening to her husband, and so the police just can't get anything out of her. It's a very slow burn story, but I will say the payout was so good. Last but not least, for the thriller genre, I had to recommend one of my absolute favorite series of all time. Finlay Donovan is killing it. This one is so unique from the other ones in a sense that it is dark humor. This book has you questioning what's gonna happen next, but not only that, you are laughing along with and at Finlay the whole time this book and this story is unraveling. Basically, Finlay is working through a divorce with her husband, so she's turning into a single mom, but she's also a writer. So she meets with her publisher or her editor at a Panera, and someone overhears her talking about her next thriller storyline for her book and thinks she's actually a hitman, and so she somehow gets hired to do these jobs or this specific job, and it is just the most hilarious thing. If you have ever seen Dead to Me on Netflix, it's almost the same thing like this, and we also have her nanny that comes into play with this, and it's just so hilarious. I cannot get enough of this series. I love Elle Cosimano. I've heard her talk in person, and she is just such a bright, bubbly human being. If you guys have not picked up this series yet, please do, especially on audio. The audio was phenomenal and so entertaining the whole way through. Next, I want to dive into our fantasy books, and I only have 3 for this one, and that's because I didn't want to choose any fantasy that had a ton of politics or a ton of world building. For me, these are my comfort fantasy books, and I hope you can find comfort in these as well. I feel like they are just feel-good books that just make you smile the whole time you are reading them. But the first series I wanted to talk about is the Wayward Children series by Seanan Mcguire. I think when I first started reading these, the first 2 or 3 were out, and I have kept up with them ever since. They are very short, easy stories to fly through, but they almost always have an amazing moral or story or lesson that goes with all of these books. So Seanan Mcguire really knows how to pack a punch with these like less than 200-page novels. Basically, there is a school for troubled children that is run by Miss or Mrs. West, I believe her name is, where children that just have different life issues are coming to this house and kind of working through them. I know that is a terrible way to describe this series, but we follow different characters in each book or different children, and even though it kind of reads a little bit like middle grade because typically with adult books you don't have young children, there are just such good adult life lessons and stories in this, and I adore Seanan Mcguire. Her writing is so lyrical and beautiful, but without being too fluffy at the same time. And because they are so short, you can definitely fly through a couple of these even in just one day or one sitting. The next book that I had to recommend, because it is one of my top favorite comfort books or books that just make me smile the whole way through, that is The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. If you just need a book that is going to put a smile on your face or make you laugh the whole way through, definitely pick up a book by TJ Klune. There's nothing better than his found family tropes. They are so heartfelt and so good and meaningful, and I just adore his writing so much. In this book we have Linus Baker, who is a by-the-book caseworker in the department in charge of magical youth. He decides that he has to go to this orphanage and figure out if these children are being well taken care of, if they can keep the orphanage running, and so he goes and stays for a little while, and he gets to know these 6 children, one of them being the Antichrist, which sounds incredibly crazy, I know, but there are just so many quirky characters in this book, and they all have some type of magical ability or thing that they do, and it is just so funny. It's so funny. The small little romance in this book as well is just so heartfelt, and I just feel like this book is going to be one that feels like it's giving you a giant hug. I know you've probably seen this one around a lot, but for very good reason, because everybody just loves it. So if you have not picked up this one yet, definitely give it a try. The next book I wanted to recommend is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. I cannot wait for this second book to drop. I think it comes out later in the fall. This one is just short of 300 pages, and it is the perfect cozy fantasy comfort read that I could ever ask for, and I have literally pushed on everyone that I can because it's so cute and it's so good. We have our main character Viv, who's an orc that decides to hang up her sword. She's done fighting and doing quests and going adventuring, so she decides to settle in this little coastal town and start up a coffee shop where people in this town have no idea what coffee even is, and it's just so funny and humorous to see some of these characters try the coffee and some of them don't like it, and so Viv will make a coffee that's iced or one that's a latte with milk, and it's just so funny to see these characters discover coffee for the first time. Not only that, but we have a character who's a little mouse named Thimble who decides to volunteer and bake these different things, and obviously he's a mouse so he can't like communicate with them, and the way he communicates is so cute and he's so precious. I will literally protect him at all costs, and I need more of Thimble in book 2. If we do not get that, I will be upset. This book has close to no politics, there's no world building, you're just diving straight into the coziness of this story. There's a little bit of a romantic side plot, which definitely was not overdone. I don't love romance in my fantasy, especially if it's not meant to be romantasy. So this was just the perfect mix of everything that I love. And if you have not checked this one out yet and jumped on the hype train, you definitely need to. Next, we're going to get into some of my favorite cute romance books. I'm definitely not like a spicy romance girl, but someone who I discovered recently this year and who has taken the top place of romance books is none other than Abby Jimenez. I cannot get enough of this author, you guys. If you have seen this author all over BookTube, all over TikTok, all over Instagram, that's your sign. You need to read some of her books. In case you don't know, this is currently sitting like at a duology, with part of your world being first and yours truly being second. While you don't necessarily have to read her books in order, there is characters in the second book from the first book that I think you will appreciate a lot more. I've just seen a lot of people read her books out of order, and it kind of makes me sad because I feel like their experience may not be as great, or they don't really fully understand who some of these side characters are. So I definitely recommend starting with part of your world. I personally liked it a little more than the Friend Zone, but that is another series you could look into picking up. In this book, you follow our main character Alexis, who, yes, definitely reminds me of Alexis from Schitt's Creek. She definitely has a high quality sense of fashion. She's not used to being in nature and getting muddy and just being in a small town, but she ends up meeting Daniel, who is this sweet guy in this small town, and I think, if I'm remembering correctly, her car breaks down, so that's how she stops at this restaurant and she meets him, and he's just this sweet, quiet carpenter. He also owns a baby goat that he puts in pajamas, as well as a pig who he calls Kevin Bacon. So there's just so many different small elements to this that just made it so funny, but so cute and wholesome. And I just feel like there is not anyone that wouldn't enjoy this book because it's just so much fun and it's so endearing. The same goes for yours truly. This one is a little bit more like Grey's Anatomy, and this one is a little bit more like Gilmore Girls. So if you guys have seen or love either one of those shows, I feel like you should definitely check these out. This one is a lot more of an emotional read, and I can't really go too much into explanation of this because it is the second book, but this currently stands as my favorite romance of all time. So if that doesn't convince you to read it, I don't know what does. And of course we have the tried and true Miss Emily Henry. If you have not picked up an Emily Henry book yet, these two are my current favorites. Book lovers definitely definitely sticks with me because there is a sister dynamic between the two of them, and I believe the town is called Sunshine Falls that they go to visit, and it's supposed to be in North Carolina, which is really close to where I live. But when Nora and her sister go to this small town, she keeps bumping into Charlie, who's actually an editor, if not her editor, I think, from back in New York where she's from. So it's just super funny to see this guy keep popping up out of all the places in the world, this tiny town in North Carolina. And of course they strike up a romance, but Emily Henry's stories always have way more than just the romance. Like I said, there's such a great sister dynamic in this that had me in tears. But of course People We Meet on Vacation is going to be perfect for this time of year, especially as we transition into summer. And this one was definitely more my speed with a friends to lovers. There's a little bit more of a build up, but they also have a past together, and it just makes the romance so much more sweet but also believable. And this one was just such a fun time. I love Emily Henry's banter. This one especially made me laugh out loud the whole way through. So if you're looking for a book that's just gonna make you feel good and laugh out loud, you definitely need to check out Emily Henry. Switching gears here a little bit, because I don't know if I would call this a romance, but it is a romance without giving anything away. It's just hard to describe this problematic book, and that is Daisy Jones and the Six. The main reason I want to recommend this one is because of the format that it's told in. This whole book is an interview style. It basically reads like a biography of how this band came together in the 70s called Daisy Jones and the Six. This is such a crazy book that's going to stir up so many different emotions in you, and I also could care less if there's a music element involved in books, but this one, for whatever reason, has me in a chokehold. It is so good. Taylor Jenkins Reid just knows how to write and put emotions into her stories. So even if you aren't interested in this one, I can also recommend One True Loves, because that one had me sobbing. So just be prepared for an emotional read. I feel like having something that makes you emotional is gonna automatically bring you out of a slump. Last but definitely not least is my favorite way to get out of a reading slump, which is graphic novels. Graphic novels are just so much fun because it's not based off words, but it's basically based off of the visual and the colors and the vibe, and there's just so much more to look at than words on a page. And I could pick up a graphic novel at any point and just love it and enjoy it so much. So I'm going to recommend you 4 of my personal all-time favorites that I would recommend if you've never picked up a graphic novel before. My first graphic novel I ever picked up and read is Nimona by Noelle Stevenson. The characters in this book are so quirky and so fun. As you can probably tell from the artwork, it's just a very unique artwork style, but it makes it so entertaining. Nimona is an impulsive young shapeshifter with a knack for villainy. Lord Ballister Blackheart is a villain with a vendetta. As sidekick and supervillain, Nimona and Lord Blackheart are about to wreak some serious havoc. Their mission: prove to the kingdom that Sir Ambrosius Goldenloin and his buddies at the Institution of Law Enforcement and Heroics aren't the heroes everyone thinks they are. This one is packed full of humor. There's also dragons. There is so much adventure that this is not one that you are going to get bored with. This is also supposed to be made into a Netflix adaptation soon, which I'm not sure how soon, but that's just crazy insane to me, like that you can make an adaptation from a graphic novel. So definitely pick this one up if you've never seen it or heard of it before, because then you have the adaptation to look forward to. Nimona is definitely more young adult, but this one, called The Seance Tea Party, is definitely more middle grade, but that does not mean that there are no good meanings in this book or that there isn't depth to it, because I cried at the end of this, you guys. I could not believe I actually cried. The style of this one is very simple and very cute, but I love the way that the faces are illustrated. They're just so cute and so sweet. But this is about a girl named Laura who befriends a ghost named Alexa that haunts her house, and Laura does not want to grow up. Alexa will be a kid forever because she's a ghost, but Laura Nimona thinks that growing up is just this terrible, awful thing and she does not want to get any older. I just love this story because it kind of talks about embracing your inner child and that you can always have that inner spark within you. And this was just such a sweet story. I don't want to spoil it and I don't want to say too much else, but this one just always sticks with me because the lessons learned in this were just so good and so well needed, I feel like, for any age. The next graphic novel that I have here is thankfully going to be a series because I need more of this so badly. It's Unfamiliar by Haley Newsom. I'm just going to read you the back because I feel like reading the back will kind of give you an idea for how quirky this one was. Meet Planchette, a lonely young kitchen witch. She has high hopes for her new home, a place where she can finally be herself and maybe even make friends. Unfortunately, she discovers that her perfect house is haunted. Really haunted. Ghosts live in the paintings, they crawl on the ceiling, and they pour out of the faucets. While Planchette can whip up a perfect pizza potion, getting these supernatural guests to leave is more than her magic can handle. To get out of her paranormal predicament, Planchette befriends a cursed girl, an introverted siren, and the worst witch in town. Together they struggle to put these spirits to rest and find their own sense of belonging. This one was so funny and so unique in a sense that a lot of what the characters are feeling with their emotions is drawn in their eyes. So there's definitely a reason why her eyes are so big. But I also just love the color palette in this one. It's a little bit more pastel, kind of mixed with dark, and it's definitely cute, dark, cozy. So if you like those kind of vibes and you like witchy things, definitely pick this one up. Alright friends, that is all I have for you today. I know that I've probably mentioned a lot of these books on my channel before, but if you've never picked any of them up, there's a very good reason that I continually talk about these. So I hope if you are in a reading slump or find yourself in a reading slump, you will pick up an old favorite, or you will try an audiobook or graphic novel in a different format, or end up picking up one of these that I recommended. So please let me know if you do. Thank you guys so much for clicking on this video and supporting my channel. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in my next bookish video.